for writers on writing. And so our usual format is to have the panelists first speak. So they'll share their stories. And then at the end, we'll have time for questions and answers from students. During the panel presentations, I ask that you keep your microphone on mute. And so to check if you're on mute, you should have a little icon of a microphone, a little red one, and there should be a line through it. And that lets you know that you're on mute. I also want to let you know that tonight's event will be recorded. So if some of your friends couldn't come, or if you have to leave for some reason to attend to something else, we have a recording that you can take a look at later. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our first two speakers, and then those two panelists will talk with us. And then I'll introduce the second two speakers and they'll speak. So we're going to start with Julie and Loni. Julie Weber is currently a commercial program manager for Rockwell Automation. She has held previous positions with Honeywell as a customer marketing leader, Johnson Controls as a senior content strategy manager, and Space Saver as a content specialist and environmental marketing specialist. Prior to starting her career in marketing and communication, she had a career as an interior designer. She took on marketing and communication initiatives very early, writing case studies and internal newsletters while maintaining her position as an interior designer. Julie has a Master's of Arts in English and a Bachelor's of Arts in English and a minor in English and professional writing, all from Mount Mary University. Our second speaker will be Loni Luna. Loni is proud to be part of the 2008 graduating class at Mount Mary. And because she graduated during the last recession, she's learned a thing or two about starting a writing career during economic turbulence. Loni began her career in technical writing with nonprofit organizations. She meandered into medical device products marketing and has happily landed in marketing for a B2B SaaS company, which you'll have to explain what that is to me. In her current role at MSI Data, Loni is in charge of demand generation, social media, web content, email marketing, media relations, product marketing, consumer marketing, and much more. Welcome to Julie and Lana.
Thank you.
So Julie, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie, and I guess I will start with my background, which is a little bit unusual. As you heard Paula say, I used to be an interior designer. So this all stems from I never really knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I knew that I wanted to do something in the arts or something with writing, and I never knew how to combine the two. So I got a degree in interior design and I started working in that field. And while I was doing that, I decided to go back to school and get my bachelor's degree in English, not really knowing how I would put that to use, but knowing that I wanted to do that. So I was going to school and working full-time as an interior designer. And I graduated in May of 2009 with my bachelor's degree. And then 2 months later, I lost my job as an interior designer because that was during the recession. So it put me in a really interesting position because there really were no design jobs. Architecture, construction, building, design, it was all kind of at a standstill at that time. So I applied for a lot of marketing communications jobs, knowing that, okay, I have this English degree, I have some experience, I'd been published in a couple of publications, including Arches. I had done some case studies for my job as a designer. And so I spent the majority of my time trying to pivot and switch into a career that would make use of my English and writing degree.
Julie, I'm just going to have you pause for 1 minute. I think you're frozen. Let's see if you can get unfrozen.
Paula, I don't know if it's a Zoom issue, but in my writing conferences earlier, it was endless struggle with audio today.
Why don't you go to Loni?
I think she's going to probably try to reconnect with us. It looks like she's become disconnected. So I think what we're going to do in the meantime, Loni, if you don't mind, I'm going to have you step up. And I'm sorry I called you Lana, by the way. My sister-in-law is Lana, and I knew I was going to call you that. So
it's all the time.
Loni.
People call me Luna, Looney,
People call you Luna?
whatever. Totally
Okay.
fine. And nice to see
so
some
if you wouldn't
familiar
mind,
faces
I'm going to have
here.
you. I'm going to have you go ahead and go while we try to reconnect with Julie.
Of course. Yeah.
Thank
and
you.
Hi, Anne. Hi, Wendy. I'm so glad to see you guys too. Hi. And I'm very happy to be here. I definitely remember the panel that I was an attendee at when I was a student at Mount Mary. And I ended up working with someone who was on that panel. So these can be really powerful, not only as networking events, but a way to find out more about the actual work of writing, which is what I love to do and what I do now. But getting started with my first job right out of the gate, I have a bachelor's degree in professional writing and a minor in journalism. And I really, really thought I was going to be an international journalist. I had a French double major for a time there. So I went into the publications department at the Zoological Society as an intern in 2006, I want to say. And luckily, I did a good enough job there that when I graduated, they hired me on. Thank goodness, because it was 2008. It was a really tough time. I don't think I would have had a chance anywhere else. So I was so grateful to have that opportunity to continue working at the Zoological Society. And what a fun first job. I got to like interview zookeepers who are bizarre people. And I got to learn about all different kinds of animals and stuff. It was just a great time, a great introduction to the writing career. But then moving on from that job was really tough. It took me probably the better part of a year to land a real full-time gig. And that was at the Daily Reporter in Milwaukee. I didn't get a writing position there. It was kind of more data entry, proofreading, editing kind of role. But I thought it was going to be my foot in the door to becoming a real journalist. Again, still had that dream in mind. That didn't end up happening. They were really trying to get me to move more towards business management position, which really no interest for me whatsoever. I'm really more creative than that. So I transitioned out of that role and into nonprofit work. I started doing technical writing, communications, and marketing at different nonprofits in Milwaukee. Didn't pay great, but you know, it was good experience. It was at least employment. And I did meet my husband at one of my jobs, so that was nice. Currently, I am at MSI Data, where I'm the demand generation manager. Didn't even know there were different kinds of marketing when I graduated, honestly. And I've probably done 3 or 4 different types by now. Right now, demand generation is one of them. And in that role, B2B SaaS, Paula, I got you. Okay, so B2B, business to business. SaaS, it's capital A, or capital S, lowercase a, capital S. It stands for software as a service. So it's almost the same model that every software company uses now, is a SaaS business model. Again, in my career, I've had to learn way more about business than I would have ever thought I would need to. It's been very helpful, though, especially dealing with different sales partners, and you know, sales reps are definitely a big customer of mine, a consumer of my content. And what I actually do now at MSI Data, the breakout of my day is probably about 50% content creation, maybe 25% content distribution. So sending out emails, PR, social, anything like that. And then maybe 25% research. And that could be looking up industry statistics, verifying contact information for marketing campaigns, looking up vendors, trade shows, virtual events now this year are a big one. Oh, I didn't go over the types of content I create. So I get to use a lot of writing, thank goodness. I do webinars, press releases, blog posts, social content, guides, ebooks, case studies, sales presentations, onboarding materials, newsletters. I'm on a team of 2, so it's really up to us. You have to be a producer. There's no room to not, keep your end of the job. The writing skills that I use every day. So research, like I said, copywriting is extremely important. I know they say people don't read anymore, but you got to get them to, listen to you somehow. And it's going to be through good messaging that really speaks to their pain points, their experience that they're going through right now, and then how your product can solve that for them. Persuasive writing for sure, business writing, proofreading, and also interviewing is a really big one that I didn't anticipate in a marketing role, but interviewing subject matter experts, even if you're not familiar with the topic, which I'm not. My business is field service management. I never heard of it before I started here, so I really had to get up to speed with interviewing people, making sure that I knew what I was saying, at least a little bit up with the lingo. So it was really important, the research aspect of that, to make sure that I at least sounded like I knew what I was talking about, even while I was learning about it. Other skills that have been really important in my career, surprisingly, graphic design. That it seems to be more and more people are combined into like one role, graphic design, content creator kind of role, which is where I'm at now. Luckily, I love doing it. I've PowerPoint design is one of my favorite things to do ever. So I'm really thankful that I get to do that and have this creative aspect visually as well as through writing. So it really helps to have that creative part of my job too. All right, the last topic I was asked about was any career advice, and this is my favorite section, so yay. Okay, so number 1 is going to be always give your best no matter what. The first few years of my career, I would call myself underemployed. I was employed, I was doing the job, but it really wasn't an exact fit for my skills. It wasn't an exact fit for what I thought I could really achieve, but I still gave it my all, and I was the best I could be in that role. And ultimately, that was what got me recognized and got me lifted up into these other roles within a company. So even if, you're just the proofreader at the Daily Reporter, do your best at it, and you never know what kind of doors it can open for you. And I'll give you a real life example. So when I was working at another B2B SaaS company called Skygen USA, I was working as a technical writer, and I had gotten really close with my boss. I was promoted to the team lead on that team. I was like, all right, great. This is my career forever. Thank goodness I found it. Then my boss ended up being transitioned to another role within the company. She left my department. And because of our close relationship, and she knew what I could accomplish as a technical writer and some of my abilities outside of that, she actually said, hey, Loni, you know what? I'm starting this product marketing team. Why don't you come and try it out? And that's how I started out in marketing. It was really just someone saw that skill in me and decided to give me a try. So I would really recommend just whatever you're doing, give it your all. Have a positive attitude. Please don't gossip. If you have a problem, just take it to your boss. Really, a lot of problems I've come across in my career could have been avoided if I had just done that. All right, number 2 on my advice. Don't leave just for higher pay. If you're gonna leave, make sure it's something that actually matters to you. I've also made this mistake before. I switched from a smaller software company to the biggest medical device company in the world, thinking that it would be, you know, a boost for my career, of course, a boost to my salary. And I really, really ended up not liking it. I just felt like lost in the shuffle. I felt like my accomplishments weren't really being recognized, you know, and that can be important. So it's important that, you know, find what works for you. Don't just settle for the highest dollar amount. Really, just like, this is your career. Own it and make it yours. This is going to be my last piece of advice. If you have a dream job in mind, I think now is the perfect time to go out to that person who has that job and just ask them to talk to you about it. Right now, there's no pressure to meet in person, so you can just request 10 minutes on a Zoom call, whatever. Also, something I really wish I would have done, I think it would have helped to help me narrow down my focus, even discovering that there's different kinds of marketing. Who knew? So I would highly recommend, if you see something that looks really awesome, you're really attracted to it, just reach out and see if you can learn anything about that from them. So that is my story. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Loni. I appreciate it. And thank you for jumping in there. I think we're going to swing back now to Julie. I see you're back with us and unfrozen.
I am.
So
yeah, sorry about that.
No, I think it's just a matter of technology. We have to just kind of roll with the punches, right? I was thinking, oh, I hope this all works tonight. And my sister told me, you know, I have not been on a Zoom call yet where everything worked. You just have to adjust when whatever happens. So Julie Weber, everybody.
Hi, I'm not even sure how much you heard of me speaking. So just a little bit. Okay, so my background is a little bit unusual. I started out as an interior designer, and hopefully you heard a little bit about this part. And I decided during my time as an interior designer that I wanted to go back to school and get my English degree, partly because I never really knew what I wanted to do when I grew up. I always kind of wanted to do something in the arts or something with English, and I could never decide between the two. So I thought, I'm just going to pursue both. So I was working full-time as an interior designer, and then I went back to school and got my bachelor's degree in English from Mount Mary. And I graduated in May of 2009. And then I lost my job as an interior designer 2 months after that. So it put me in a really unique position because a lot of my colleagues, you know, we were all struggling to find work at that time, especially in the design, building, and construction industry. And they were really limited to what they could apply for. And I had a whole other skill set now with my English degree and my minor in professional writing. So I was applying for a ton of marketing communications jobs. And it took a really long time, but I eventually found a job as an A&D and environmental marketing specialist, the longest title ever, with Space Saver Corporation. And Space Saver manufactures shelving. So it was still kind of in this interior design furniture world. And that's really kind of how I got my foot in the door. And when I was hired, it was, you know, specifically to market about environmental and sustainability, things that they were doing to create greener products and talk about that to architects and designers out in the industry. So it was a really good fit. And I got so much experience in that role. I was creating educational courses. I helped build a website on, you know, their environmental story, did a whole bunch of stuff that I had never done before, but just kind of dove right into it. And I got so much experience at Space Saver doing all kinds of different writing. So like I said, educational courses, blogs, web copy, brochures, things like that. And I used that experience to eventually take another role at Space Saver, really focused on content creation. So it was like anything that needed writing, like a white paper, case study, or a blog, I was doing that. And that eventually led me to Johnson Controls, where I was hired as a content strategy manager. And it was, again, a really unique role. I was managing the content strategy for their customer center. So it was a physical space where they had like 10 different interactive kiosks and touch tables that you would interact with different content. And so I helped to create that content. So a lot of that was digital, writing copy, creating graphics, working with agencies to deploy some of that stuff. And then from there, I went to Honeywell for a short period of time. And to echo something that Loni said, sometimes taking another position, you really have to think it through. That position for me, even though I was doing a lot of interesting work, you know, some of the similar things I did before, website copy, it just was not my favorite. And I knew that pretty quickly. And so from there, I looked for another position and eventually found this role at Rockwell Automation. And my role here is very different than my previous roles. I would say I'm doing a lot less of the production of content, but more of the strategy behind what we're going to do. A lot of it revolves around product launches. And Rockwell, I mean, it's very technical. It's very specific engineering focused type products. And so it's determining, you know, what we're going to do and when, and, you know, what kinds of content, how we're going to launch a product, how we're going to take things to market, things like that. So kind of a crazy journey, but it has landed me where I am today. Writing skills, I mean, even though I'm not necessarily writing copy anymore for websites or blogs or case studies, I'm still using those skills all the time. I'm often reading and reviewing things that other people write, whether it's a brochure or a press release or something that's going out about a product. I'm looking at that stuff and reviewing it. So having that skill of like proofing and peer review, it comes into play a lot. I would say that's a skill that I'm using almost every day. And then there's still the need to every once in a while step in and actually write something. So write copy for a brochure, write copy for a case study, even creating presentation materials, things like that are things that I'm doing on a daily basis. Career advice, I guess my biggest thing is just kind of follow your passion. I know that sounds really cheesy, but when I went back to school for English, when I was still working as an interior designer, I had absolutely no idea how I was going to make that blend together. I just knew that I was very passionate about writing and about English literature, and I wanted to study that. And I thought, well, I'll figure out how to make it into a career at some point. And through circumstance and experience, I was able to completely change from doing interior design work to doing marketing communications work. So I would say if you have this idea, you think you want to do something, but you're not really sure how to make it happen, I would say go for it, and the pieces will fall into place. It may take a few tries, like it did for me, and several different positions and whatnot, but I would say just, you know, follow your passion as much as you possibly can, and you know, see where it takes you. Yeah, I think that's about it. I guess that's all for me.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much. We're hearing some common themes here. That's awesome. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our next two speakers, and then we'll hear from them, and then you all will have a chance to ask questions. So make sure you're keeping track of questions if you have them. Okay, our next two speakers are Megan and Shannon. And Megan Nordvall, after graduating from Mount Mary, Megan went on to continue working in mental health for Whole Health Clinical Group before transitioning into grants management at the Kern Family Foundation, which is based in Waukesha. While with the Kern Family Foundation, she was the editor-in-chief of the quarterly board book, assistant editor of Keynesian magazine, and she managed grant reports and communications for 34 universities around the country. Megan continued her work in grants as an administrator for the University of Chicago before transitioning into a role as a senior analyst for their Institutional Review Board, or the IRB board, at the U of Chicago's Social and Behavioral Sciences Division. She is currently back in school as a graduate student in the University of Chicago's Public Policy program. And then our last speaker tonight will be Shannon Malter. Shannon graduated from Mount Mary in 2015 with a degree in communications and a minor in English. She started her career with Kohl's Corporation, where she held various roles in the technology, communication, and training early talent departments. Last year, she accepted a new role with Walmart Corporation as a project manager. She recently made a career change into user experience design, or UX. She's currently the UX lead on an associate-facing website where she leads a team of designers and developers and also manages the user research, site content, and design updates. So we'll hear from Megan first.
Great to be here tonight. I wish I could see everyone in person. Maybe I'd be not sweating as much. Maybe I'd be a little bit more relaxed. So I'm a little different here because my major was actually psychology, behavioral science. And I was one of the last classes to actually get that degree at Mount Mary before they changed it just to psychology. And I minored in professional writing. And so I had worked in mental health prior to pursuing my degree with Rogers Behavioral Health. I was a counselor for a number of years. And decided to eventually, go on to get my degree. That's what I was passionate about. That's what I was working towards. And then while I was in school, I actually did a work study with the marketing department at Mount Mary, which it turned out to be, I didn't know it at the time, it turned out to be kind of a game changer. I decided to pick up a minor in English professional writing, and I worked on Arches as well as an editor and contributor to that for about 2 years. I recognize Shannon's name. I don't know if we work together too often, but hey. So I actually started working with MCFI and Whole Health Clinical shortly after graduation, trying to divert back into mental health. And I had a bit of an incident with, I had a client that, this is totally diverting, that reached out to my grandmother, started calling her, getting my personal information. Things became very unsafe. And there wasn't many options for my manager to do anything. And so I at that point decided that I needed to do something different that was I still wanted to do something good for the world. That's why I went into psychology, was, to do good, to help people. And so I found a position through networking, through like a friend of a friend of a friend, at the Kern Family Foundation, doing like a grants assistant. It was for their engineering program, which I don't know anything about engineering. So I had to be able to take concepts that I had no idea about and make it work, pretend like I knew what I was talking about. And that's kind of where my technical writing background came into play that I learned at Mount Mary. When I was in school at Mount Mary, I really geared a lot of my classes towards technical writing. That is where my interest lied. I tried to take a creative writing class and found out that I was not good at it at all. But I loved literature and I loved technical writing. So when I was at the Kern Family Foundation, I had the opportunity to write the quarterly board book, which has to do with across the entire foundation, different grantees that would come in I'd have to polish them and make them look really good so that they could get funding. So I was trying to condense all of these reports on these different institutions and organizations around the country into a one-pager saying, hey, look at this institution or this organization. They're really nice. They're really good. Like you should fund them. So that was one of my roles. And then I worked as an assistant editor in Keynesian, which was our engineering magazine that we put out twice a year. And again, that's part of that technical writing, taking something that you don't quite understand or quite know, you're not an expert at it, and making, like, spinning it and making it a really good piece of work, that something that is digestible and anyone could pick it up and find it interesting, even if you don't have a background in engineering. After that, I transitioned to the University of Chicago. My husband found a position in Chicago, so we ended up moving. And my grants experience and my writing experience really took me into a grants administrator role, where I reviewed grants that were submitted, or proposals that were submitted through our office to be submitted to federal institutions like NIH or NSF, and also private foundations similar to the role that I was previously in. And I was able to also do some proposal writing at that point, where I worked with a lot of professors to help them polish or even just create their proposals from scratch. So again, a lot of that technical writing came in where we were studying grant writing, we're studying proposal writing, and that stuff just came right into play. It came naturally, which after a number of years, I didn't think it would, but it was still in there. And I recently, in the past year, transferred over to the IRB, where I currently do a lot more analysis than I do writing. But what I love about it is all of my literature classes kind of came into play here, because a lot of people, I've been asked a lot, the literature classes, you're analyzing text, you're looking for things in novels, like, what are you going to do with that? Well, this is what I do with it. I look at human subjects research and I say, well, what do they mean by that? Like, if they say that they're going to do X, Y, and Z with a participant, like that could come off kind of weird. It legally might not be good. Maybe you want to choose a different kind of wording. Maybe you want to, maybe we should rephrase this. Maybe we should use some completely different language, and I'll give it to you so that way legally we don't get in trouble, or legally you're doing the right thing and you're within bounds. So and that's something that I never thought was an option. Like, I never saw that coming when I was doing my literature classes. So that was really quite amazing. So I do a lot more critical thinking and analysis now more than ever. And I still do a lot of writing, but it happens to be more suggestive language, making sure that the language that they're choosing is correct, because it's so important, because that language is going to be printed, it's going to be published, it's going to potentially come back to us. So that, that's really important for us to do. So in that case, I work a lot with legal too, to make sure that we have the proper language selected. As far as career advice, I think I'm living proof that it's not always about the degree. It's about the skills that you obtain and the integrity behind your work, because I think I have a degree in psychology. More of my skills are in writing and in English. And I maybe should have been an English major. Maybe that would have been, but I'm still in the position that I want to be, that I'm still in the position of working in writing and in English, which is something that I love, which I never thought was going to happen with the direction that I was going in college. And my second piece of advice is, don't let a job title intimidate you when you're applying for positions, because not everyone has all of the skills, all of the requirements that are listed in those descriptions, and they can be intimidating. But if you feel like you can hit a few of those marks and you can show, the interviewer, the company, that you can hit those marks and you can work really hard for them, the rest of those skills can be acquired on the job. And that's another something that you can add to your toolkit later that, you know, that you can use towards other positions. I don't think there's a position that I've had that I haven't utilized a skill that I've learned from another one. And all that all goes way back to me working in the marketing department when I was a sophomore or so.
Thank you so much. That's really great, especially thinking about some of those job ads that sometimes I look at them, I don't even know what the title is. Right, so just to not be intimidated by that. All right, thank you. And last but not least, we're going to hear from Shannon.
Awesome, thank you. Happy to be here tonight. Fun going last and being able to hear from everyone else and kind of connect the dots. I think you'll have a fun time hearing how many common themes there are between all of our stories. So I'll also start by telling you guys a little bit about my time at Mount Mary. So I was actually drawn to Mount Mary initially for a fashion degree. And it was pretty quickly that I realized, although I always kind of saw myself in like the retail industry or in the fashion industry, that my skills really aligned more with communications, writing, and that whole creative side. And so I actually changed majors, I think like first semester there or something, to communications. And my new dream job at that time was really like fashion journalism, fashion, PR, communications. And so I actually started writing for Arches as well. So I feel like Arches was somewhere woven through all of our stories. Really liked the journalism route, but still really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And so in my junior year at Mount Mary, I was contacted by someone there that had an opportunity for me that was nominated for, that was called the Commons. So I'm not sure if that's a connection Mount Mary still has, but I was actually in the pilot group for the Commons. And so that first year we really showed up, and it was like, I think just myself and one other person from Mount Mary. And it was an event where the purpose of the Commons was to really bring together local corporate companies and local college kids. And so I think the year that I did it, it was like 18 local colleges from southeastern Wisconsin, and a bunch of really impressive local businesses. So like I said, we all kind of showed up at this kickoff event, and it was this really long weekend where honestly, like no one really knew what it was going into it. Like again, it was our pilot year, but I saw some big name companies and just a great opportunity. So I accepted, despite the fact that it was like an entire weekend, like Friday night, Saturday all day, Sunday all day. And so that first night I ended up getting on the Kohl's corporate team. Kohl's was there and was one of the companies that was going to be working with the college kids to do that kind of like an incubator weekend to do a project. And then we had a pitch event that Sunday night. So kind of just by chance got on the Kohl's team, and then did a project that weekend, presented it that Sunday night. And then it turned into this thing where our Kohl's representatives that were there, they said, you know, like, there's not much structure to the Commons yet, but we would love to have you guys spend more time working on this project, and then we'll bring you into Kohl's corporate to present it in like 3 or 4 months. Like you guys can actually have the time to breathe, do research, get a thorough presentation together, and then come present it at the Kohl's offices. So although it was a great opportunity, it was a huge commitment. You know, I'm sure a lot of you can relate. While you're a college student, you're balancing a job, a full semester schedule, and then it was like this opportunity that was so much extra work and effort. But you had to make that decision if you were going to make that commitment. So I did. There definitely were some people on my team, since I was working with students from other schools. They made all the teams, all students from different schools. Some people decided they didn't want to make the commitment, but I did, despite it being a struggle at times. And so anyways, a few months later, we presented at Kohl's, And I was approached afterwards by someone interested in me being their intern that coming summer. So I ended up accepting the role and I interned at Kohl's that summer. And so I think it was just a real lesson in, putting in that extra work, despite how hard it can be on your schedule and how much you might really struggle through it. It can really pay off in the end. I would say that's one of my biggest lessons through my career and education so far. And so anyways, I did that internship that summer in the technology communications department. So it was my first exposure to a corporate environment. It was really lively, lots of people. I was still in retail, but it was my first time being exposed to what a technology department is. So definitely way more technical. I didn't have any of that technical background, all sorts of new concepts and things that I had to try to communicate that I really didn't understand. So it was a really great summer and I ended up really becoming passionate about technology, which is funny because despite how Kohl's is a retail company, my day-to-day job was really technical, and I was really able to hone in on my creative skills that summer as well. So I think you've heard from some of the other women, a lot of like corporate communications jobs, you're making a lot of PowerPoints. You kind of have to wear that hat of being a graphic designer pretty often. So I ended up doing a lot of graphics. I did a lot of writing for newsletters. We had an internal website that I worked on. And so really found like my sweet spot, and I really liked that job that summer. So at the end of the internship, I was offered a full-time role. So I ended up working for Kohl's after graduation. And so I stayed there for about 3 years, and I really loved my time there. I'm so grateful that I started my career there and I made connections. I even made some best friends that I'm standing up in my coworker's wedding from Kohl's this year. So really nothing but great memories from there. And so one of the question prompts that we were sent, which was interesting for me to actually reflect on, since I did have such a great experience, was about why did you leave and how did you get your next position? So I was able to come up with 3 reasons. So the first being, which I wouldn't be surprised if some of you have heard about it since it's one of the larger companies in the area, but my major reason was business security. Kohl's went through some pretty big layoffs while I was there. And even though I was lucky enough to keep my job through it, it really does a lot of damage to overall morale, and just kind of a level of feeling uncertain about your safety. And so for me, it was one of the things that really led me to feel like it was my time to leave, that I kind of had done my time there. It was really good while I was there, but I felt like it was ready to kind of find my new adventure and opportunity. And so luckily for me, I actually had a leader from Kohl's take a position at Walmart in a vice president role. And so they ended up recruiting some people from Kohl's to come follow them for their team at Walmart. And so it really was right at the right timing that I felt ready to go. I was always curious to leave Milwaukee. I didn't think it would be for Northwest Arkansas, but I did leave Milwaukee for the first time. And, it was really trusting that this was a leader and a champion that I knew that I would like working for them despite whatever my day-to-day was. I trusted that it was the right person to follow. So that's another big pivotal part of my career, I think, is, networking, finding the right people and finding the right trust in people, that you're willing to make that right leap of faith. So moving to it's only been like a year, almost a year and a half at Walmart, and I've had like 3 different jobs, but I really liked all of them. And so when I first took the job, I was a technical project manager, but a very similar role to what I was doing at Kohl's in the technology communications and training department, really using that right side of my brain where, that's a skill that's really lacking in a technical side of a company where writing skills aren't always the strong suit of those people. It's a lot of left brain, analytical people. So it's really amazing how much the creative right side brain people are needed out there in business. So starting off my time at Walmart, I did a lot of, presentation design, different communication related tasks. And there ended up being an opportunity on my team to be a full-time, well, there wasn't a website that existed yet, but they needed someone to really take the full-time lead on a website that needed to be developed. And so I signed up for it because it kind of included everything that I have found that I liked thus far in my career. It involved a lot of design work. It involved, managing content, writing copy. And I've always just really liked web design and ended up discovering user experience design. So that was something that I actually took the initiative on myself. So I could have basically kept the same day-to-day job and project and kept the title project manager. But I did the research and I kind of figured out, I was like, this really isn't the title doesn't fit my job. I'm really kind of leaning more into this user experience career path. So I took the initiative to talk with my leader and really, advocate for myself to get training in user experience design. So after getting all the right sign-offs and budgets and everything, I was able to go and get certified in user experience design. So also hearing from the other women, what your initial degree is does not mean you have to stay in that one career path. You'll discover a lot about what you like. You'll find new interests throughout your career. So really be an advocate for yourself and, take training on your own. There's a lot of free, what's available for free on the internet today is crazy. So really be your own advocate and be looking for those development opportunities. And so it's only been less than a year now that I've changed to that user experience design role. But after getting that certification, I came back and I really led that website creation. So went from the strategy of the website to training people on the website to launching the website. And now really also serving as that like product owner of the website. So everything from the roadmap, training people on it, managing a team who work on it, and managing and publishing all the updates on the site. And so one of my favorite parts is really being able to teach people. So I also serve as like the UX lead on my team. So after coming back from that training, I've had to train people and even I host different training sessions on user experience with people on my team. So that's kind of a little insight to my day to day. And so as you can tell, there's still a lot of writing kind of infused throughout those responsibilities, from, having to do storytelling in presentations I have to present, to even just a day-to-day email. I think anyone who works out in the workforce it's really eye-opening how much English skills are lacking out there, and what you can be praised for having like basic grammar skills and people being impressed with your writing. So it's great. And I really attribute that to my time at Mount Mary, and it's a really great skill to have, just having that foundational writing capability. And so, as you've heard, some other skills that have been really fundamental in my career has been really leaning into my creative side. Again, mentioning that that's pretty rare. So I think for most of you, being an English major, you're probably more right brain than left brain. And so I think just lean into that and see what other skills you enjoy and can add to market yourself. Having just an English degree might not make you as marketable as someone that has English and graphic design and some other skills. So I think really leaning into what else interests you and what doors that could open for you. But some other skills are really adaptability. Like I mentioned, I've changed roles, changed teams, changed companies pretty quickly. So I think that's a great skill to have out there these days. And last but not least, people skills. I think regardless what role you're in, being able to communicate effectively and make great relationships is very important. And so leading into advice, so kind of going off of those topics, I think just advising everyone to be a sponge and really being a person that's always a go-getter and wanting to learn, wanting to take a new challenge. I think also finding something that you're known for and makes you stand out. I think pretty early on, like I don't think I even really touched PowerPoint much when I was in college. And then it was like pretty soon in my career at Kohl's, I was like the PowerPoint girl. Like I was the chief technology officer at Kohl's, knew my name because I was making his PowerPoint. So it's like, it's crazy, like a skill that you can stumble upon that you have never expected. But I think finding something that makes you stand out and being that go-to person is really a great thing to happen early in your career and can really open new doors for you. And so let me reference my notes if there's anything else that I haven't mentioned. But, just kind of the common theme is like, whatever, you never can know what doors are going to open and what opportunities. Like if you would have told me when I was in college that I'd be working in a technology role in a technology department, I would have never believed you. But I can say I absolutely love my job and I love what I do every day. So really just be open and pay attention to your interests and what you can do to advocate for yourself to get to that dream job or that career path that you would like. So that's my story.
Thank you so much. That was that. You guys have given us a lot to think about. What an interesting series of jobs you've had, and it's great to hear how you built on skills that you started with at Mount Mary, but that you weren't afraid to keep going. So now's the portion of the evening when I'd like to open. I guess it's the floor. I don't know, the screen. I'd like to open the screen to questions. And I was trying to think about how to do this, and I guess we're just going to have to be brave. If you have a question, unmute yourself and go for it. And if somebody else speaks at the same time, we'll untangle you and take turns. But so if you have a question, go ahead and unmute yourself. If you would start speaking, maybe you want to say something like, I have a question, and then we'll all be able to find you on the screen. And then go ahead and ask. Kyla, did you have something?
I just did. For like students whose microphones may not work, can they use the chat box?
Oh, sure. That's a really great suggestion. Absolutely. So if you don't have a mic or it's not working, go ahead and put a question in the chat and then we'll make sure it gets passed along and answered. That's a great question. Thanks. Okay, so who's going to jump in and start us off with a question?
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
So awesome job, ladies. I really learned a lot overall. My question would be, how did you prepare yourself for the career? Like in terms of, did you do anything outside of what you learned in school afterwards as you was waiting for the opportunities? Did you do anything additional to kind of help set you on that path of your career that you have now?
Yes, I can start. So when I was trying to get into marketing communications roles after my career in interior design kind of came to an end and I was trying to pivot to marketing communications, I took on learning how to use like Adobe InDesign and Photoshop and things like that. I did some self-teaching on my own, got a book, took a class on Illustrator, did some of those things that maybe I didn't learn in my Mount Mary classes. So that really did help, because to echo a lot of what everyone else said, I was doing some of that design work when I was in my different roles in marketing communications, like creating email banners or, doing brochures when somebody else wasn't available to do them. I was, doing the layouts. So kind of supplemented my skill set by learning some of those programs.
Great.
Yeah, I can speak on this too. So when I was looking at switching more from technical writing into marketing, I knew that HubSpot was a big platform that a lot of people were using, and they have a ton of free classes. They're really easy. You can complete them in less than a day, and you get your little certification you can add to your resume and LinkedIn. So I would definitely recommend trying that out if you're interested in any kind of marketing, email marketing, content marketing kind of position. I would recommend you try it out.
Could you repeat that, Loni? What was the name of it?
Yeah, so HubSpot Academy, I believe.
Yeah, adding on to that, I started my experience with Kohl's while I was in college, and then I had done a internship prior to that as well. And I would say through both of those internships, it was really eye-opening to me how much I had not used even the basic like Microsoft Suite, or actually Kohl's used the Google Office suite. So similar to the Microsoft Suite, but still very different and a learning curve. So I think learning either of those are going to be fundamental to really any role you get, and you're going to be in and out of them every day. So that would be one thing that I just noticed in my first roles. Like I really didn't know them yet. You know, there's not much exposure that you have to Excel while you're in college, or PowerPoint. So I think anything that you could do with those, I think those are almost guaranteed that you'll be using them in some way in your career.
I have just a little bit to add to that. I think those are all really good points. I think this is just speaking from my experience, for your first couple of roles, take on as much as you can. If somebody wants to offer you a responsibility, take it, because you'll find your strengths and weaknesses. You find what you like and what you don't like, and you still acquire the skill. Like even if you don't like it, you have acquired that, at least a little bit of that skill to know what to do in that specific situation. Or if it is Adobe and you find that you don't really care for that, but you know how to use it so you can get the job done. Just take on as much as you can without overwhelming yourself. But if an opportunity comes up, you just grab it and do what you can with it.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat box. Some people think that the future for everybody is in STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and math. They think we have a spell check. Why do we need English degrees? How can a degree in English and writing help a career in STEM? And a couple of you have alluded a little bit to this, like the people you work with, sort of like the STEMmy people, the really technology people, need a little bit of your help. But if you could talk about the kind of help that you've been able to bring to your STEM friends, that'd be awesome.
I can start again. I work for an engineering company, Rockwell Automation, Allen Bradley. I mean, it's very much, I'm surrounded by engineers all day, every day. And they definitely are amazing and brilliant people, but they need help translating. And I can't remember which one of you said that, but you said the word translation. And I would say it's very much taking this technical, they're talking about like the flux capacitor, and translating that into something that everyone can understand, especially like a CEO at a company that we want to sell to. So communication skills or English skills, telling stories is really important, because that sometimes gets lost in translation when you're working for an engineering company or something super technical. There's always going to be a marketing department, a technical writing department. There's going to be these people that are trying to translate that information so that customers can use it and understand it and decide to purchase it.
Yeah, and I can add, because I agree with everything she said, that's kind of been the role that I've played as that translator, especially when I was able to serve in a role that was more training related. So if you can think of those super technical SMEs trying to convey, how to teach something, it's even harder than them trying to communicate something, because how is someone supposed to learn from someone that's so wrapped up and deep in the content that they don't know how someone else would be able to learn that content? So that was a really interesting experience for me, of truly having to learn from them and then translate the message to learners, where I think that is something that an English storytelling skill set can definitely come into play. But another thing to bring up, just going a little bit down the route of user experience, is really being able to empathize with your end users. So I think when you're in communications, English, training, or website design, whatever it is, there's a level of empathy and being able to understand who you're communicating to, and then really be able to utilize that skill set to convey the proper message, whatever the end version of that is. But I think that's a skill set that is usually lacking in the STEM field. And that's why they have special roles for user experience design, or have such close partnerships with communications and training teams, because a lot of those engineers and technical people don't really have that skill set.
Thank you. Any other questions for our panelists?
I do have a question. This one's for Julie. Just because she did say that she had a lot of, proofreading to do, and that's something currently that I'm working on a lot, because I tend to write how I speak, and proofreading and just editing properly is a big thing. So I just wanted to know, Julie, what strategies do you use for proofreading, or making sure you edit, what you have to edit so it's clear?
That's a really good question. I think the approach I take when I'm proofreading or editing is it something that is easily understood? So a lot of the things that we're writing are going to go on our website or in a brochure, and a customer is going to be reading it. So I'm looking at it from a perspective of, if I didn't know anything about this, would I understand it? And I take that approach a lot. Is it simple? Is it easy to understand? Sometimes I cross out extra words, just kind of, and I think in technical writing classes at Mount Mary, I've learned, less is more. It's totally the opposite of creative writing classes at Mount Mary, where more is more, but there's this balance between the two. So that's how I approach it. Would somebody who doesn't know anything about this topic be able to understand it? And is it simple? I guess that's the way that I look at it.
Thank you. Other students with questions for our panelists?
I think this question was kind of said similarly in the group chat already, but I was also wondering, a lot of you mentioned that you were on Arches, and I'm currently on Arches as well. So I was wondering if you were able to use anything that you wrote or designed, or whatever you ended up doing for Arches in your portfolios when you were first looking for jobs.
I absolutely had things on my resume and in my portfolio from Arches. I won a couple awards, so I made sure I put that, my little section of my resume. That's what I won the award for, what year, and all that stuff. And I definitely included it as samples of my writing work. I did a lot of op-ed pieces. I did a lot of features. So I included a variety of those as much as I could until I started getting a couple more professional options. And even so, it took me a good long time to take them off, just because I enjoyed my time with Arches so much. I didn't want to take it off. So.
Yeah, I absolutely used my pieces from Arches in my portfolio. When I was trying to make that switch from design to marketing communications, I mean, I had a very limited portfolio. I had my pieces from Arches. I had a couple pieces that I wrote for some design publications. And that was basically it. And I was really using that to showcase like, hey, I'm a writer. I can do this marketing communications thing. And it really did help me. And I still have, you know, clippings from when Arches was like a newspaper, like a physical newspaper. And, you know, I still have that like shoved away in my portfolio today. So I absolutely use those.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, you know, it's one thing to have writing in your portfolio and it's another thing to show that you were published somewhere. I think that's a really great addition to anyone's resume. And then I also was on Arches shortly after they got the website. And then I was a part of the website redesign. And was able to work very closely with the website. So that was a really great experience and kind of funny, which is with my career path ending up working back with web design. But then it was even great thinking about, I remember building out my LinkedIn page when I was starting to apply places. And then I was even able to link out to the article on the Arches website. So just very cool that I could link to actual examples of my writing and show that I was published somewhere. So a huge win for resumes when you're in college.
We have a question in the chat about PowerPoint design. I think both Loni and Shannon talked about using PowerPoint design a lot and needing that at work. And a student would just like to hear a little bit more about how did you learn it? What did you use? Is that another one that you can just go online and take some classes to get your skills up? How did that work into your career?
Oh boy, it was quite the journey for me. I don't know about you, Shannon. Learning how to make PowerPoints look good. Trial and error, truly, that's what it was for me. Now I am the go-to for all things PowerPoint at my company. It was really just working my way up, starting with a PowerPoint that really didn't look that great to a PowerPoint that they're now using throughout all of GE healthcare. You know, it was truly just a journey for me. But Shannon, any actual advice you could give would probably be better.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think, yeah, it's hard to even remember. It wasn't that long ago, but it was like, it was so shocking when I came into the corporate world. It's like a different presentation deck is needed for every single meeting. It's like, it's crazy
So
how
true.
they're used. Yes, it's like, you're just meeting with 3 people. Oh, did you get a deck together? It's like, okay. Oh yeah, and they call it a deck. I don't know if that's a lingo everywhere, but yeah, so presentation slide design is just huge. And it's one of the biggest ways I would use my time when I first started my career. And I'm trying to remember like how I really gained that skill, but I took a graphic design class my senior year at Mount Mary, and that was the first time I was really like, oh, I really like this. And one of the things that really resonated with me was the way my teacher talked about shapes. And like, whenever you see a design or whenever you see something, it's like, break it down in your mind to the shapes that are on there. Because I think so many people see like an intricate design, especially for PowerPoint, because a lot of times it's just details. They're accenting either images or text. And they would be like, how does someone do that? And then if you sit there and you break down the shapes, you can usually recreate things. So I think one of the things that I really did that was different from others was I just went and researched for like inspiration. There are a million PowerPoint design slides out there that you usually have to like purchase to download. So I would do that, and then I would just recreate it with shapes and like different things and play around and just create unique designs. And other people weren't doing that. So I think that's how I really stood out with it at first. And then it just really became like my natural talent and skill, and I really like doing it too. So I don't get to work in PowerPoint as much anymore, so I kind of miss it, but it is a fun thing when you get comfortable in the tool.
Yeah, I can echo all that. PowerPoint is used so much in the corporate world. It's borderline ridiculous how much it's used, but definitely a good skill to have. And I think there are classes you can take, and like little books that you could buy, I'm sure. I think one of the things that I did is I used kind of like my Photoshop skills to supplement some of the stuff I was doing in PowerPoint. So like creating special backgrounds and things like that. But a lot of self-teaching. But yeah, I mean, PowerPoint is a very frequently used tool in the business world.
Thank you. I actually have a question myself. Shannon, you talked about getting a certificate in UX design. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because a certificate is a smaller thing than a major or a degree. And it's the kind of thing that you do once you find an area in work that you just need to add on to. So I was wondering if you could tell students a little bit about what is entailed in a certificate. How big is this? What kind of a commitment is it to get a certificate in something?
Sure. Yeah. So I know there's something that are really huge in the tech industry. When you can think about how competitive it is, and all the different new skills that are always emerging in the tech industry. Tech associates really are hungry for those certificates and learning those new skills and having something on their resume that makes them stand out. Because it's an interesting industry where a lot of jobs are becoming obsolete from automation and for other reasons, that a lot of tech associates are always trying to get that next certificate or that next skill. So I would say user experience design is kind of one of the newer, hotter topics in the tech world. So as I mentioned, I kind of did my own research and I advocated to go get some training. So I went through Nielsen Norman Group, which is one of the industry leaders in user experience design. And they hosted a week-long user experience training all day, all night, every day for a week. And then at the end of the training, you were able to take an exam for each of the courses you completed. And then you were able to, once you passed the exam, you got a certificate from Nielsen Norman Group. So it's just an example of one of the many certifications you could get that aren't necessarily from a college, but it's a skill certification. So I'm able to put like UXC after my name, and that's just the UX example, but the tech industry has a million, and I'm sure other industries have a lot as well. And so I had the great opportunity to have my employer pay for it too. So I think anytime you get in a situation like that, where you kind of find a gap and you find an opportunity that you could fill, adding something like that to your resume is a really great opportunity.
Thank you. Any other students who have questions? I see one or two in the chat here. Let me see if I can get caught up. Okay, so for all of you, you've talked a lot about how you were surprised when you got to work, how much people needed help with their writing, really how those skills were somewhat lacking, sort of across the spectrum. You've worked in a lot of different industries. So the question was, where do you see demand for English majors right now in the fields that you're in, either in the grant area or in some of the more technical fields? Right now, if you were to say to somebody who's in school, wow, we really need these people with these skills, what would you say?
Honestly, if I could go back and be an English major, I think I would. And maybe that's something I'll pursue later, but I'm currently in a grad program for public policy where I get to kind of marry my two passions of English and writing along with psychology, because I'm going to basically work on public policy and mental health and how it's structured in the country, which I think is very important right now. And I think English kind of can sneak into any career field. There needs to be communication. There needs to be, I mean, writing, it's communication. Any career field, I mean, public policy right now, it has, my quarters are all stacked with math and statistics. Like I'm not great at that, but you get me to like the policy part and I can do it. So it's someone to translate all that, the math stuff that the people are really good at. They need people like us to make that publishable to the rest of the world and digestible. And if you even open up your news feed in the morning and you see all the different topics that are out there, I mean, people, it needs to be heard, it needs to be read, it needs to be digested. That's how you create informed citizens.
I'm really glad I'm taping this. I think I'm just going to play that soundbite for everybody. I tell my students this all the time. There's communication in every single industry. I don't care if you're selling shoes to toddlers or horses or tires for your car or refrigerators or computer software. You have to be able to communicate with your customers and with the folks who are actually creating the product. So that's really great that you just repeated that for me. Thank you. Okay, well, we're coming up on about 20 after. I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll thank our panelists for taking all this time with us. Does anyone else have something to ask?
I was wondering, like, what skills or tips do you think like would be good for like writing and like also like technical writing for it?
Yeah, absolutely. What kinds of, like, when you say something like technical writing, what does that all encompass? What sorts of things do you need to do if you're doing technical writing?
I think a skill, kind of going back to talking, even though it was more training products and things, it still was putting together technical writing with the SMEs. Sorry, that's subject matter experts. I think a huge skill is being able to consult with them. I think that was an area that was hard for me because, again, if you do end up working in the STEM field and you're working with engineers and very technical people, communication and verbal communication is not always a strong suit for them. So as the writer, how can you ask the right questions and have the right dialogue with them in order to get the correct information? So I think any sort of kind of like interview skills or consulting skills would be really important in a technical writing field.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I definitely, especially, I mean, there was a time when I was writing case studies, so I was actually interviewing customers and learning about their experience and then writing that. But even now, when I'm talking about a new product, I have to interview the subject matter expert to understand what that product is, what it does, you know, what the special features are, what industries it belongs in, things like that. So interviewing skills is really important. I would say, and I kind of mentioned this before, but brevity, being able to say something very succinctly and simply so that, you know, the masses can understand it. I think that's a very important skill for technical writing, especially, you know, we have a whole department that writes manuals and that can get really, really technical. And, you know, they're using pretty sophisticated language in there, but they still have to keep it to a level where, you know, anyone who's installing the product can understand. So simplicity and brevity.
Yeah, I like to follow the 3 C's, really with any kind of writing. My 3 C's are clear, concise, and consistent. And I think you really should be applying that to any of your communications, but specifically for technical writing, if someone's trying to get to an answer fast, it's especially important that you're to the point, super clear. If you're doing step instructions, make sure you actually work through the steps so you know that they make sense. And really following those 3 C's. I still use that today.
Right. Thank you, ladies. Well, I could see people are starting to need to head to other places, and I just want to thank you all again for sharing your expertise with us and your time with us. And on a personal note, I have to say I'm really proud of you. I remember you when you were freshmen. So I'm so proud of you for all that you've accomplished professionally, but it really warms my heart that you'd be willing to come back to Mount Mary and pay it forward to the next set of students. So thank you. That makes me so proud of all of you. So let's give them one more round of applause. Yay. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, students, for coming. Thank you, English department. And students, one more thing. It's almost time for advising. So be watching your emails. We're going to be sending you information out in the next couple of days for advising and registering for spring classes. And thank you again, everybody. Have a lovely evening. It was great to see all your smiling faces. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for having us. Take care.
You bet.